Hello there, guys. So it is Tummo time for me. I'm going to stick my hair up, sorry for the armpits, because it's very hot and muggy. I think muggy is the exact word that people use for this kind of weather. It is around 30 degrees centigrade, which will be like 90 plus and a bit in the other kind. It's not even that extremely hot. It's just that there's very little air movement and there's a kind of a bit of a breeze outside. It's actually probably more comfy to be outside than in, but I wanted to do Tummo versus Shakti, kind of a progress report again. And I've nothing better to do. So, coffee. I've got my Shiva Lingam here, and I should be able to do this because there have been interesting things and aspects to things that I want to report. I suppose what's most important for me personally, if you don't know what Tummo is, there's Intel playlists even. I'm not even completely sure whether I made a separate. I have two Shakti energy work playlists. One is 2020 and the other one is just Shakti and things like that. So Shakti energy work is like my own personal approach to Kundalini Yoga, about which there's a whole lot more intel on the net and on the tube as well. I have, because I'm kind of going to reintroduce things here, because of the way my life sort of panned out overall since I was a small kid, really. I have been introduced to, Kundalini ideas, basically, not even the energy as such, but the ideas about chakras and all that from very early on. My mum was into meditation a lot, and I think by now that what I'm doing nowadays and what she was doing like 40 years or so ago, there's very little resemblance between those two. Because to actually unlock Kundalini or Shakti, whichever term you prefer to use, I prefer to use the term Shakti because it's less well known, I think, slightly, at least on this end of the planet. Whereas for Kundalini you get all sorts of cultural, it becomes an idea very quickly. And Shakti is a person, somebody to be reckoned with, and it's an energy, and she is known as a person, and that's more or less the way I relate to her. So this is quite, some of all this is very personal. It's also, I put this out there because there's hardly any, nobody goes on the net and talks about really what it's been like to do this, that, or the other type of meditation, how exactly they went about it, what it feels like, what the vibrational nature of things is, etc., etc. So, and that's just my jam. So that's why I'm here. So I haven't really used the term Kundalini Yoga myself, although sort of reading about things now and listening to vlogs and things, I sort of realized that that's basically what I've been doing, because you can call it by all sorts of names, but there's an energy, and one thing they don't tell you, I think either, which is something that's been kind of crucial to me, is that the energy of the Shakti, so the Kundalini energy is really the same thing, that sort of blooms out of your root chakra if you let it, more or less, comes out of the earth. And I've had the opportunity of following some kind of energy work courses and sort of healing work kind of courses years back that introduced me to the concept of the earth line, which is what sort of a vibrational connection between your root chakra at the bottom end of your backbone, so your tailbone really, and the heart of the earth, like so. And there's actually just a vibrational connection between your bottom and the heart of the earth, which can be a comforting thought all by itself, I find. Then there's the Earth Star chakra, which is in underneath your feet. So it's where your earth line meets the actual earth surface, right? And I find that kind of because I'm a Westerner, so I kind of get challenged by these types of ideas. So what happens when I'm on the first floor of a building, when I'm lying in my bed upstairs here, is my earth star chakra right beneath my feet? Is it, I'm lying flat on my back, is it over yonder behind my feet? Or is it in the middle, underneath the middle of my body now? Or is it still in the earth, more or less at the geometrical center of things underneath the middle of my body, but under the surface of the earth? I have never been able to figure that stuff out yet. I don't think it matters all that much. I tend to opt for the third of those options, by the way, because it's about the earth. It is about your body and the earth. Okay, so the relationship between the earth and the body is a vibrational relationship, and it's not a geometrical positioning of things necessarily. So they may be an echo if you're lying flat on your back on the first floor or on the 18th floor or wherever it is that you are, there will be like an echo or a sort of a field kind of a happening, because your aura is around you, and at the end of your feet and just slightly beyond that, there will be kind of like an availability to connect with the earth, because we were made to walk the earth. The earth made us to walk on her, I think. So actually, while by this time that I've got this going again, I'm fine that I have things to talk about. So yeah, it was such a muggy and slow day, and there's loads of people around here who are still on holiday. It's very quiet, which is nice. I don't get yelling, I don't get shouting and music and kids running around that much. But I get a bit stuffy in the brain, and I need me a second mug of coffee, instant this time, which is quite nice. So wish me luck, and then I will just proceed on with my general Kundalini Shakti energy Tummo intel here as it comes up, because I've got a couple of things that I want to talk about. The Earth Star chakra was where I was at just now. I don't need to go into all that. You can investigate for yourself. I have done a gazillion different types, I think, of all sorts of types of energy work where there's loads. There's also intel on the channel about that, about how how your aura field works, whether you can protect yourself from vibrational influences from the outside, from other people or not, or how that works really, and stuff like that. So there's plenty. I've used my earth line a lot, and I've sort of noticed that if I put a healing light, so a very strong white, most of the time white healing light, into my earth star area, or ask for that to take care of things down there, which is what I call an earth line healing, really. That's a wonderful exercise to be doing, and you have to make sure that you can meditate properly for at least half an hour and so on. That clears out a whole lot of rubbish, karmic, vibrational little gizmos and bits, and sometimes they're not so little, that are hiding inside that earth line of ours or in the earth star chakra. All that can be cleared out, and what I've noticed is each time I do that, I get a lot more Shakti energy in my body that I can feel. So this is going to be a bit of a long-winded kind of, I'm still introducing my things here. Hopefully you can follow along what I'm saying here, because I've been on this path for a while now, so I have to sort of start in the middle, and then there's like bits that are I'm kind of hoping that I can also sort of reintroduce to you guys. And as they come along, that's what I'm doing. So the thing is that with Shakti energy, I've felt and been aware of Shakti or Kundalini in my body for a while. I suppose around, do I know when that was? I may have been aware of it for a decade or so at least. And you have to sort of notice. That's the first thing that you have to do. There's going to be a couple of how-tos in this video as well. If you, I'm trying to also reintroduce a couple of the themes here, and then maybe go into a bit more, a bit of a different approach to present things. So you have to figure out, you have to feel for yourself. Nobody can tell you, which is what they do in India, right? They just tap you on the forehead and you're getting a Kundalini rising, just like that. It's a different culture, it's a different society. I would fight that tooth and claw. I don't like people messing with my energy. Even if I've said yes to it, I hate it, So I want to figure out how to do this thing myself when I want it, when I need it. I am god awful stubborn and intractable, and I cannot be made to obey anything anymore. I don't do the obedience thing ever. I can listen to people and rationally, decide to whatever it is, but not just tell me what to do and I go and do it. That's not my jam. So the thing you need to know is you need to figure out how to detect Shakti. First of all, you need to be able to say like, hey, okay, hey, there's my Shakti again. She's making herself known, or I can feel the heat, as it makes itself known in the under half of your belly, basically. And what I've done then for all of 2019, I started more and more using that energy, working with that energy, seeing what that would do. And if this little spoon here is my backbone, what I basically did for the whole of 2019, on and off like 3 times a week or something like that, was bring up or accompany the Shakti along wherever I could manage to have her be, okay? And she would follow along wherever I wanted her to go. And if there was a point here, at some point in my lower back, or in my in behind my heart, or anywhere in my throat, that was kind of blocked or painful or cold, I would just notice it. I would be focused completely. This is a hell of a focus exercise. The more you focus, the better work you get, the better results you get. I would sit here to the side. There's the backbone with the little problem area. There's the Shakti coming up, and I would say, please, Shakti, let's go. Not with words, in intention. Please go close as you can be to this problem area for me. And interact, engage endlessly. It was always just about that. That was Shakti. I'm being really distracted because my cat has bought a dead mouse, and she's playing with it right out the front of the door right there. So there may be noises. Okay, so back to shop here. That was really pleasant. It was a good exercise to be doing. I did this along the whole of my spine and into the sort of the bottom of my skull here, at the back of my neck, for on and on, for the whole of 2019. It was, I could feel improvement. I could feel cold areas becoming less cold, tensions fading away, general warmth increasing, I suppose general goodness out of this. So that was nice to do. it was also fairly limited in what I think, how I think of it now. I suppose I was really shepherding the Shakti into little areas where I felt like, okay, so here you can do a lot of good and just work for me here. And she did it. Shakti does what you ask her to do. If you ask, you have to be pretty, certain that, okay, so this is an area that needs attention. Let's go take care of that area together. So that was Shakti. Shakti energy work. That's what I've been vlogging about and doing things in this playlist about those for before 2020. So in January this year, I started on Tummo. And Tummo is a lot harder to get at. And there I've been trying to find intel about Tummo practice, or whatever it would be called in Indian, in the Sanskrit Indian subcontinent cultural heritage. I have not really found anything. I haven't really properly looked because I haven't got any names. I haven't got, if you know anything about this, I'd love to hear from you, because Tummo as such is a Tibetan approach. The origin, as it is described in the literature, is Indian. So it would be really surprising if the Tummo yoga, so to speak, hadn't been maintained and kept alive in India as well. I just know that there's a yogi or philosopher or guru called Naropa in the 11th century, I believe. If you look up Naropa or the 6 yogas of Naropa, you're gonna get all sorts of intel. He was Indian, and whoever it was that wrote it all down back then actually encountered Naropa and talked to him and learned from him about the Tummo. And that's the origin, really. So there must be intel in Indian culture about this type of approach. It's called something else, and nobody, or maybe people talk about it, I don't know. What I had was the thing where what people most often talk about in connection with Tummo is body temperature issues. So if you're really cold and you practice this a lot, then maybe because of the temperatures in the Himalayas, really, that's the reason why this particular technique got used and developed and implemented in Tibet so much more, and in the south of India they didn't need it for the temperature. Possible. I have no clue, really. That's what you get to read. People present Tummo also as being only a temperature increasing, sort of an inner fire, physical fire kind of a method. And I have found it to be something completely different, really. I have not noticed really any physical temperature changes due to my Tummo practice at all myself. But I haven't used it for that. I haven't gone also using the breathing exercises that they advise you to do for Tummo, which would probably give you a lot more of the increase in temperature kind of a result. I haven't gone into that at all because I'm interested in the Shakti process. What is my Shakti doing and how, and what's the result of that? More coffee. It's gonna be an insanely long video, I hope. So Tummo is where you actually know your Shakti energy really well. You guide it, so you can, like a sheepdog, gently. You don't fight it, because there's no point in that. It'll just go the other way. Just gently and befriend it and be kind to it and be mates with it, I suppose. Your Shakti is your best friend, I think. It's impossible to have a better friend in your body than your Shakti. So, having said that, you guide. In my case, I'm a female. I have to take into account my reproductive organs a bit more. So that's something I've encountered also. There's vlogs about that in the channel. I'm going to turn my spoon upside down now, because I can still use it as a kind of an example, going like this. So this will be my uterus right there. Okay, so these are all my female organs, like so. And if I turn the spoon sideways, so this is me sitting on my bottom, like so, and my whole belly is out here, I'm facing that way. I will, if this is my spine, I will guide the Shakti to go along the spine, okay, which is the same as what I was doing earlier. But if my uterus ends here, I will then ask the Shakti to come forward into my belly. This is about halfway what you could consider to be the second chakra, if you like. The second chakra has, in my experience, two functions, two parts, if you like. The one is the reproductive, sexual, and the emotional components that have to do with that part of your life, really, kind of a thing. And there's another part of the second chakra that is more about joy and connection, I think. More or less, it's also a bit of an inner child kind of an area. It's a really interesting area. So this, the important thing is that you get your Shakti away, if possible, as much as possible, away from the sexual organs. Because in there, the Shakti will become sexual energy only. And that will follow its own natural process, which is fine, but you cannot then use it for something else. So that's crucial. Get it to go, here I am again, behind all the organs to halfway between your tailbone and what on the front half of you is your belly button. So really halfway in the middle there's the area where it becomes neutral again, so to speak. And the energy can go forward onto what I call the Tummo floor. And it feels to me, and this is where I go into my details of my own personal experience with this stuff, it feels to me like there's a whole lot of little chakras in like a necklace or a bead chain going from the Tummo floor, from the middle of that at least, and then forward to the inside of the skin of the belly, and then up through the inside at least this much inside of you, okay? This is the outside of your skin. This is where the little necklace is going up, and it goes all the way to here, I think. So it depends a bit on how you feel this, and also if you do this for 5 years more, you will have felt more and gotten to know more of all this, what's going on in there, and whatever is important for you, because it depends on your past experiences, on all the rest of it, how exactly this is going to make itself known to you. But the principle is the same. So what happens when do you exactly get Tummo to happen is when you bring the Shakti onto the Tummo floor, to that middle area right there. And then for a while, you just have to bring the Shakti to it, sit there, concentrate, and be patient. And the Shakti will sort of accumulate around there, and it becomes hot. You can feel that. It's like a glowing coal that you carry around, on top of the sensitive female organs. There are phases in a woman's hormonal cycle where she does not want to do this, because she needs the energy for the organs. For example, when I have ovulation, there's a bit of a moment, and when I have PMS and or menstruation, there's a bit of a moment where I can tell they need the energy down there. They need the energy to do the female organ work, And I just have to let it be. I just have to let them have it. And I can even help myself a great deal by bringing the Shakti into there and just generally letting it diffuse inside my uterus and my ovaries and all the rest of that. And just letting it, be nice and hot, nice and warm, nice and comfy. So that in parentheses, okay? We were arriving at the point where the Shakti the energy is sitting on the Tummo floor in the middle. There is a point where all of a sudden there's a change. It happens naturally. It happens by itself. You do not do anything. I do not do anything. I just have to bring the energy to that point and keep it there, because what Shakti energy naturally does is go sideways, go into activities, go into life, dissipate, basically. So that's the secret. The secret is focus. We know this, don't we? So what happens naturally at that point is that there is a change. There is a coalescing, if you like. I'm talking about this from the perspective of 7 months onward, when it first happened to me. And because you get this coalescing or transformational process that starts happening, there is a sense of something opening up. This is actually this opening of the space, of the potentially the Tummo space, if you like, is what's described in the Tummo literature. There's a definite sense of an increase of space in there. That's your most important moment right there. Everything afterwards is fun and games, I think. Well, you may encounter some bumps in the road personally and so on and so forth, but I don't think that's much. It doesn't, it depends how you deal with that, it's personal. People say that Kundalini Yoga is dangerous, and it is also the most potent. I suppose it all depends on what you want from life. I have had nothing but the most glorious benefits from Kundalini Yoga and or especially from Tummo. This particular approach is just the best thing that ever happened to me. So the expansion of the Tummo happening then proceeds actually by itself up into your torso like this, slowly. And I suppose it depends on who you are and whether you have maybe past life experiences with this technique. If you are here listening to me yak about this stuff, then maybe that is actually the case. I remember the first couple of times that I did this, I had an immensely strong sensation, I can actually still call it up for myself, of this Tummo bubble growing inside from here, growing inside me and around me actually, and there being in the outer edge of that bubble, there was information about Tibet. There was very specific sense of fragrance, a sense of contrast of hot and cold, warmer air and fires, and oil lamps or something inside and cold air outside. And very earthy, grounding kind of an experience, very nice. And then a very strong sense that's actually still there of sound, of the horns that they blow to chase away the demons. This deafening New Year celebration type noise that they make. That resonance is in there. It's insane. So that's what I experienced. It doesn't have to be the same for you. I was really paying attention because I was enjoying every second of this. So this has actually not been so important for me, this past life thing, because it's very comforting and it's also very strange and I don't really know what to do with it, other than just talk about this right here. I have just let this energy proceed on its way. I have really just I've revisited this. I think I did it slightly less often than the Shakti energy work over the past 7 months or so. I must have done it twice a month or so at least. On and off, going into the Tummo floor area, bring the Shakti in, First couple of times I had to go over this effect of this bubble coming up, this happening by itself. I had to make myself acquainted with this new feeling energy, really. It feels completely new. And so from there on, what I've sort of conjectured is that what happens is that the Shakti is sort of the Shakti energy, which is pure and natural and comes out of the earth, is introduced into your second chakra in this way and transforms. It becomes actual fuel in your vibrational apparatus that you are. And that's where what you then get is that emotional things are changing, perspectives are changing, and that's actually why I'm really here today, because so far I'm doing half an hour worth of an introduction. I'm doing really well, I think. But this is just because I want to make sure that you know what I'm talking about, okay? So fast forward, I haven't really had all that many extraordinary, like other than this past life Tibet kind of a experience, or a thing that made itself known to me. I haven't really, like, every week or so been confronted with humongous change at all. I just felt that I was slowly becoming stronger. I was slowly becoming slightly less anxious in life, which is something that I tend to, like, half of the world population is scared of the other half, right? So I'm just one of them who takes her turn in this little circus of ours, being scared or scaring other people, most often inadvertently. You just do your thing and people are reacting to each other like no tomorrow. So no real massive events, otherwise I would have been here and talked about them. However, I have spent the last 2 weeks, I came back last Sunday, today's Thursday, so it's a bit of a week already that I've been home. Before Sunday I spent 2 whole weeks in a place in the northeast of France that I know really well. And this is where things suddenly, for me, become interesting on a much more personal level. So I hope I can keep this up a bit longer. Otherwise, at some point, I will have to break off and start for a part 2 of this tale, okay? So I may just do that. So the place we've visited, I've actually, how can I say this? I've actually lived in that area with my mum in the Rhine Valley, which is Basel in Switzerland is part of that Rhine Valley, so the sort of the bottom of that area. And then you have 2 mountain ranges to the east in Germany, the Black Forest, and to the west, the Vosges mountains that both of them go up to about 1,100 meters or so. It's real mountain, especially at the top areas. It's quite cool up there, and that was real nice to visit also during our holiday, and we went up a couple of times on the Vosges, on the French side, that is. So where I lived back then with my mum was a little tiny farmhouse in a little tiny, very quiet village among 100 other little villages like that in Alsace, in the Rhine Valley. And one of the things, it's been an important phase in my life. I was 14 years old. One of the things that I loved about that area back then already was that you could see the sun rise behind one of the sets of hills and see it then later on set behind the other set of hills, and you had always a very clear sense of where you were and where north was. For some reason, that was important to me. And the road that I used most of the time going to school and so on and so forth was north-south anyway, so you always had this very clear sense of where you were. Fairly peaceful times, most of it. The beginning was difficult because when I got there, I came from a completely different culture and I had to, get along with people. And I fell ill at one point. I had a bad throat infection, and as a result of that, I've had tonsil problems all my life. And I think, looking back now, I'm tending to not take it so hard anymore. But there was a long phase in my life where I really didn't get any help, and I was much more alone than I really noticed or knew myself. And I felt like I couldn't ask my mother for help. She was the only relative, the only relative around that I could sort of talk to to a certain extent. My mother was badly traumatized by her war camp past and other elements in her life, and so I was. It's a long, convoluted story with many details, many people, and many problems. And I sort of adapted, which I think is by now is something that's much more common than I used to think it was. I hated myself for it because I adapted to communicating with people on their terms, or on what I thought their terms were only. And I completely sucked at having my own position, having my own life at all. So I have felt, I suppose I haven't really felt it. I haven't been aware of any of this until way decades later. But it was one of the important moments. So I'm talking about all these things because it's all relevant. You can imagine me 13, 14 years old, running around that area, especially once I had gotten over my bad flu and all the, because I think I was at home for 3 weeks and had a fever. It was a nasty kind of an infection that I had. I think I adapted like I tend to naturally, as far as my temperament goes. I tend to do things with a vengeance. So I think I overdid the adapting to other people's viewpoints a bit more in order to get along and not have too much aggro with people, And that's been my modus operandi since then, and I still do it. However, nowadays, okay, so fast forward back again from 1970, whatever it was, 1990, 1980, revisiting this area, I have always, whenever I came back there, and we have revisited this area because it's pretty, not only those little villages, but especially the close by hillsides. There's slightly larger villages and towns sort of stuck in the valleys to the Vosges Mountains. There's a lot to see. There's waterfalls, there's big, huge, beautiful forests that you can walk in, and there's pie to eat, and there's, nice shops and French cooking and have you, lots of fun. I will also upload at one point a little tiny shot of the little house that we rented for the probably fourth time this summer. Because of COVID, we weren't going to go camping. We wanted to be somewhere slightly more away from people. And I filmed halfway through our stay there. I filmed it was raining, a rainstorm for a minute or so that you will get to see that along with this story as well. So that's what that looks like over there. And it's really pretty. You can visit this place wonderfully. So for me, what with not knowing what my own truth really was, because that's what happens when you grow up, divorced parents, traumatized people, Auschwitz, Japanese concentration camps, the lot of that. I grew up adapting so much that I had no clue who I really am myself. So what I did from my personal nature was I attached myself emotionally all the time to particular elements, to nature, to forests, to scenery, particular parts of the scenery, particular parts of the way things look. I used to particularly have massive affection for nostalgic affection, I suppose, for particular streets and things. It's very human. It's almost completely human. But it was the whole furniture, the wallpaper of my whole life. Because we moved house that much, I was attached to the little physical streets and things. And I had it's almost like, I suppose you could say it's almost like the whole thing was a story. And there were Lord of the Ringsy elements in that, Hobbit-like elements, there were, but it was all plastered over the top of a whole lot of despair and silence and loneliness and screaming misery, really, that I had no clue of being aware of, because it was always this way. I was always alone. So yeah, it was not easy. Coming back to this area, these places and these streets and these fields, and seeing the exact same, everything still there, but now with Tummo inside me, I need only what is real. And that's so completely weird. It's like I have no more nostalgia. I have no more reminiscing of things. I have no more clinging to the little patterns of this is where my mother used to blah, or this is where we used to say that blah, or there are memories. The memories are still there, but not the reminiscing. See the difference? It's a very subtle difference, and it's massive for me. And it's been massive, and it's been with me all this time, all these 2 weeks, like 24/7. The little house that we rented is an old house. It's built around 1900. Can't show you the inside of the house. It's got massive walls and blinds, that you have to open up at the right time to let some of the cool night air in and things like that. I used to live with my mum in a house that looks, 70% of this house is the same as the house that we used to live in with my mum back in the day. And the other 30% is like another house in the south of France that I used to live at with my mum. So in the early times that we rented this place and stayed there and slept there, I was kind of clawing at the walls to get out. Because it reminded me so strongly of all this emotional crap of, not knowing how to live my life and feeling very powerless and very afraid and very angry and very, very miserable a lot of the time. So it's like all that has just fallen off my chest completely. And it's really weird. It is so weird. And I think that may be happening for a lot of people in Kundalini practices in one way or another, is that they let the energy into them, they let the energy do the thing in their consciousness because it feels good and you want to. And then a little while later you run into this kind of thing and you go like, I know I recognize this place, and it's weird. So I'm afraid, I think really that most of the dangerousness that people attribute to Kundalini Yoga, whether it's not simply this, whether it's not simply you have to process this weirdness. You have to process what used to be, and that you are not necessarily the exact same person that you were at 14 years old. Makes sense, doesn't it? You are not the same person that you were at 14 years old. You aren't, obviously, otherwise, Lord help us. So there's all that. That's happened. It's been crucial. It's been like a constant sense of, I know every millimeter of this house. I know every millimeter of this street. I know what it smells like. I've had all sorts of attachments. There's the village that the little house is in that we stayed at has a Jewish cemetery that I did a vlog at. I'll dig up the link and stick it in the description for you. It's like a little shortish holiday vlog of the actual Jewish cemetery, and that we revisited now for the 10th time or so. And beyond that, there's a really great, beautiful basilica, and it's like a pilgrimage site. Really, people come there to, light candles and stuff, and it's gorgeous. But my connectedness to this area is completely changed. And actually talking about it right here is another part of me processing this, because I am not attached as I used to be, and in a certain way it feels like a loss even, which I didn't know until I started this sentence, that it actually feels a bit like a loss, like losing a part of something that was kind of comforting for me, I suppose, always. So that's one aspect of those things. So I have been constantly weirded out. I have been constantly expecting a particular way of engaging with my surroundings, also in town, everywhere, all the time. We visited Switzerland. I said Basel earlier. We visited Basel 2 times actually, because I had stuff to get. And that's a really nice town. The old center of the city is gorgeous. It's absolute recommend to visit if you're in the neighborhood. I got hyper emotional entering Switzerland the 2nd time around. And because I used to live in Switzerland when I was a toddler. So that's like a generation before. It's only 10 years. But before the Alsace episode, living there with my mum, I lived with both my parents in Geneva for maybe 3 years or so. And it was the beginning really of my life. And I had to draw cards and sit there, and I was crying because I'm really fond of Switzerland, especially of the more mountainous areas and the areas where they've got 3 languages going. Everything is in German, French, and Italian everywhere. It just shows to make sure that, because they have all these languages, so it's a really special country. And I've got massive, I suppose I've got memories of the view from our flat onto Mont Blanc, the Mont Blanc on the other side of Lake Geneva, every day of my life for those 3 years. But my cards, the tarot cards that came out, that actually I did sort of a consciousness type of a little 3-card spread, where there were 2 cards at the top that were sort of conscious, and the bottom one was unconscious. And so my unconscious relationship to Switzerland came out was the King of Swords. And I instantly felt like, okay, so that's my dad. And my dad hasn't been part of my life ever since all that chaos and divorce and things happening. And it was really confusing. So there's, again, what is real. This is something that's actually real. So I've been peeling off layers of the stuff that I made up in order to survive, basically for 50 years. And what comes out, and actually tarot helped me here also, is that it's not that hard for me to imagine or to realize that my dad was originally very much part of my life. in Switzerland. And one reason why I'm so fond of Switzerland, to be around, to sort of, sit around and have a, have a holiday in there, in that country, is because it kind of apparently reminds me of him being around. And he was never, at that time, difficult with me. He was okay with me. He behaved fine while I was a toddler. So, and it's very not representative of everything else afterwards. So I suppose I should be saying now that I'm not his daughter, which is in reality, in the Tummo level of things, as I sit here now, and as I know he is over there, he's probably, as far as I know, still alive. I am not now his daughter. I was his daughter for a little while, as a little child, and it was okay then. And so I can sort of, it's closure, So to me that feels like, okay, so I do not need those experiences then to become expectations for yesterday or tomorrow or today, because there's 50 years in between. It doesn't make sense. That's what Tummo keeps doing, bringing the real over and over and over again. And it falls off me. All the masks and all the stories and all the imagery and all the nostalgia and all the crap is just fading away. But I have to get used to that. I have to sort of get my mind to work along with those lines, and I have to know that that's what's happening. Because as long as I wasn't knowing what was happening, it was kind of scary, and I felt naked, and I felt walking around those areas in France then in particular, I felt I felt fairly vulnerable. It's also, I'm sure it's got to do with everybody's, what with our massive collective experiences with COVID and all of 2020, the way that's been going. That has definitely added on to me having an enormous sense of pressure, an enormous sense of, not knowing where to look anymore. And now being back home and doing my vlogging again, doing my, organizing my sentences for you guys and my ideas, I think I make more sense of this. I have more intel, Tummo intel regarding this, the Shiva Lingam. I'm gonna do that separately. This is as far as I got, I think, in terms of Tummo. There's more, actually. There's more Tummo that's real, again, back to the complete meditation exercise by itself. Part 2 coming after this, okay? Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode, okay? Bye for now. Thank you.